Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO TRK Entertaining Series. Who's Nintendo suing this week and why are they suing them? And I've got a dual update video for you guys today because we have more information both about the lawsuit against the streamer that was streaming pre-released Nintendo games and how he's basically ducking Nintendo, as well as some updates to the Palworld lawsuit and some changes in Palworld that might be important to the case moving forward, because you know one thing is certain: death taxes and Nintendo lawsuits are coming your way, and we're going to be talking about them. Before we get far involved, it'd be a huge favor. Go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But the first update definitely involves Nintendo Switch emulation, Yuzu, Suyu, Ryujinx, and everything else, because they are mentioned in the filing from Nintendo. And this is because a YouTuber was streaming these games pre-released to YouTube and different platforms like Twitch. And that was definitely something when we first talked about it, I said wasn't the brightest thing in the world to do. Nintendo is definitely out there looking for people doing this, especially doing it publicly and mocking them, and they are suing them into oblivion. The kind of total we're talking about here is a little bit over $7 million last time I checked that Nintendo's trying to get as far as damages is concerned. And that is definitely a number that most people don't have to pay, but it seems like the streamer is actually making kind of a run for it as far as ducking Nintendo and just trying to avoid any sort of repercussion whatsoever, and it's actually relatively funny, and I kind of love it in all of the wrong ways. And we went over all of the different court filings where they showed the streamers showing pre-release games, talking about how they were emulating them, and even offering other people help to play those games before they were on the market. And that's definitely game over as far as the lawsuit is concerned. Nintendo has all the receipts and all the evidence to absolutely nail his ass to the wall. He is going to lose this case, but it seems like he's trying to lose the case in a very particular way, almost like he understands how the court system works. So while maybe it wasn't the brightest thing in the world to do what he did, and I definitely do not recommend anyone do that whatsoever, it seems like he at least has kind of an exit strategy so that he can become infamous in the gaming community and not really suffer any repercussions whatsoever. And that's what we're going to go into today as far as this update is concerned. The fact is, Nintendo hasn't been able to actually serve him with a lawsuit yet. Now, if you've never been sued before or don't understand how process service works, a court-appointed person, sometimes it's the sheriff, in other communities or different states it is a process server, has to actually hand you the lawsuit and tell you you've been served, so that you can say to a court, and a court is confident in the fact that you're aware of the lawsuit, you have been served, and you know what you need to do and when to appear. If you can't serve that person, you can't proceed with the lawsuit, and this streamer basically is ducking the ever-loving hell out of Nintendo, trying to avoid them completely. And you'll see here mention of emulation tools such as Yuzu and Ryujinx. This is all down to the fact that Nintendo still is on a full court press to make sure that it is not possible for the lay person to emulate Nintendo Switch, because obviously we have Nintendo Switch 2 coming up soon, and the process servers have failed not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 times to actually give this person the summons telling them that they have been served with a lawsuit. And Nintendo's even saying things in the posting like they seem like they either work from home or they're unemployed, and they have a ton of different addresses. Now Nintendo wants to go ahead and be able to serve this person's mother or even grandmother with the case in his absence, which is something you don't see much whatsoever. And they even post some information that he said online that is apparently threats or hostile language towards outside counsel. And I would say Nintendo and their lawyers are definitely overreaching here. It is at best shit talking, and obviously in the retro gaming and gaming community in general, shit talking is kind of the way things just seem to work some days. But this is the filing that Nintendo submitted to court, basically saying we can't actually get a hold of this guy, but he is still talking on social media. We know he's out there, and he's saying on social media he expects this to die down soon in one way or another. Now, I don't think Nintendo's ever going to stop looking for this person, but he's basically just thumbing his nose at Nintendo and making this into a meme, which again, I am not a lawyer, I'm not offering advice here, but is definitely one particular strategy. And he's talking about waving Bowser's bankruptcy magic wand and saying how I filed for bankruptcy, Nintendo gets nothing, and at the very least, I'm now forever infamous in the gaming world. I mean, I guess if you have nothing to lose, a judgment is just a judgment. If you have no money to give someone, you could technically try to discharge that in a bankruptcy proceeding, or you could pay them $10 a month for the rest of your life in perpetuity, never getting close to the actual balance due, not even talking about interest. So Nintendo's definitely not getting $7.5 million off this person here. They're not going to set any precedent, because it seems like he's just trying to send this thing to a default judgment, and that is pretty hilarious to me. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. Now moving over to the second part of the video, we're going to be talking about Palworld and its recent updates to how the game mechanics work in the game, changing things to at least set a date in stone where they were no longer quote-unquote infringing on Nintendo's patents. And even though I don't really believe, and most other people don't really believe, that they are infringing on anything that isn't so vague it wouldn't be upheld, this is a strategy on Palworld's part to basically try to placate a little bit of the issue, as well as put a date on paper in which they were no longer infringing, because a lot of times if Nintendo was to win this case, they will calculate damages based upon not only the infringements, but the lack of time that they were available and how many people have actually purchased that game. It's kind of a compounding thing. But it seems like Pocket Pair, the parent company of Palworld, has gone and made some changes to the game to at least try to satisfy some of these instances of supposed patent infringement. And this all comes down to the fact that yes, in Palworld you can throw a ball into the playfield, a monster pops out, and it does affect the playfield, which is what Nintendo is talking about in the patent. But of course, as we joked around in videos and people have in comments, that means that apparently games like baseball or even football would be in violation of this as well, or maybe not football because that is an oblong kind of oval shape, not a round shape. But again, this is such a vague patent that there's so many games that basically predate it with the exact same mechanics, and you have left tons and tons of comments of instances that I both know and have never heard of before, and that's definitely been great, and definitely something that obviously Pocket Pair's lawyers are going to be presenting in court as well if it goes that far today. And this is the issue with things like patents. They can be so vague as to mean basically anything, and Nintendo's patent here that they're basically suing Pocket Pair and Palworld for uninfringement definitely is that very vague category. Throwing something into a playfield with an aiming reticle and that thing affecting what happens on the playfield, catching things, affecting the opponent in front of you, some sort of battlefield beaten statistic. It is the type of stuff that you could basically take this patent and assign it to 100 different video games and say those two could be infringing. But we can't deny the fact that in Palworld you do throw a sphere in front of you and a monster does pop out of it. That is indisputable, but that really is the most petty thing of Nintendo to do, as we already know. But now Palworld has gone back in and take a look at those patents and changed the gameplay of Palworld in some very small ways, which would no longer be quote-unquote infringing based upon Nintendo and their legal team's definition of what they think infringement on this patent is. Now in Palworld, you're no longer throwing a ball into the playfield and summoning a monster that way. The monster will just appear right beside you, so that basically gets around what Nintendo's patent is describing, even if again it is as vague as press A to jump. But this is something that will be done to Palworld, and honestly it doesn't really change much of the gameplay whatsoever. That's why it is so shocking that Nintendo decided to pursue this in the first place, outside of petty jealousy that Palworld was basically eating their own lunch. So again, moving back to that patent, Nintendo's issue with Palworld was that you threw a ball in front of you and something popped out of it. But think of how many games have that exact same gameplay mechanic. So as opposed to trying to fight Nintendo, it seems tooth and nail on this one. The developers of Palworld just said, screw it, we'll change it up ever so slightly, and now it isn't the same thing. But you do need to understand that if this does go to court and it is found in Nintendo's favor, changing the gameplay mechanics does not absolve Palworld and Pocket Pair of everything. It just absolves them of things that happened after that date in which it was no longer technically infringing. Now would Nintendo's lawyers argue that they changed it because they knew they were infringing, they were trying to hide something? That is a potential argument. And again, I am not very knowledgeable of how the inside of a Japanese courtroom works, and that's where the lawsuit is based, so anything could happen. But it seems like Palworld's just trying to change a couple small things in the background, like getting rid of throwing those balls into the arena and doing it that way. And again, this is not surprising because Nintendo stated back in January that they were going to take a close look at Palworld and find anything that infringed on intellectual property rights or patents related to Pokemon. So Nintendo went on a fishing exhibition. They baited the rod with hot dogs and they caught themselves what they think is a gigantic whale, but might be nothing more than a tiny minnow. And that's the easy thing about game development. If there's a problem in the game, you just issue an update and then suddenly that problem is no longer a problem. They also made some slight changes to the aiming reticle as well, which may do something about the overall patent infringement case for Nintendo. But it seems like Palworld and Pocket Pair are basically trying to quietly change things, because this lawsuit would take years upon years to actually get through the court systems, and it would probably rack up millions of dollars in lawyers' fees in both directions. And it's not like Palworld hasn't made a ton of money, they could afford to fight it, but sometimes the smartest thing is to basically try to annoyingly placate somebody and move on. But you tell me down below, should Palworld fight this to the bitter end, or do you think making small changes to shut Nintendo up is a good thing? But those are the updates. Until Nintendo sues someone else, we're done, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.